Hey, hey, and welcome back to Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures. Today I'm in Prescott, Arizona, where we're here to celebrate the birthday of a man who lived here in the 1800s. He lived here, he drank here, he gambled here. He even got his picture taken here. You all know him as Doc Holliday. In fact, he spent two separate stretches of his life here, and today we're going to follow his footsteps through Prescott, from the place where he lived to Whiskey Row, to the studio where one of his most famous photographs was taken. And we're going to finish up by celebrating Doc's birthday, the way Prescott does it today. Before we start following Doc around Prescott, let's go back to November of 1879. John Henry Holliday was 28 years old. He was a trained dentist, but by this point, gambling was becoming a much bigger part of his life, and he wasn't traveling alone. Doc arrived in Prescott with Wyatt Earp, James Earp, and their families. Wyatt's brother Virgil was already here. He had served as a constable in Prescott, and the Earps were interested in opportunities opening up in southern Arizona. The destination was Tombstone, but Doc didn't go, and that's where things get interesting. The Earp party eventually continued south toward Tombstone. Doc stayed behind in Prescott, and according to the story that has come down to us, he liked what he found here. Prescott was a booming frontier town, and for a professional gambler, there was money to be made. So while the Earps were heading toward what would eventually become one of the most famous towns in the Old West, Doc Holliday stayed in Prescott, but this wasn't just an overnight stay. This would turn out to be his first of two stays in the city. Now, there was another reason Doc didn't immediately follow Wyatt south. He and Kate, the woman often known as Big Nose Kate, were together at the time. Kate reportedly didn't want to go to Tombstone with Wyatt, so the couple eventually went their separate ways for a time. Kate headed to Globe. Doc headed to Las Vegas, New Mexico. And that brings us to the second chapter of Doc Holliday's Prescott story. In the spring of 1880, Doc returned to Las Vegas, New Mexico to take care of unfinished business involving a saloon he had co-owned there. But Prescott wasn't done with Doc yet. By spring 1880, he had returned to Prescott, but he wasn't alone this time. Kate didn't return with him. The 1880 federal census gives us a fascinating little snapshot of Doc at this point in his life. He's listed as J.H. Holliday, with an A in his last name, and his occupation is listed as dentist. He's living here in Prescott, and we know exactly where. Hey, if you're liking this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ding the bell for notifications. Doc rented a room at 100 North Montezuma Street. The house was owned by a man named Richard Elliott. Richard Elliott was an interesting character because Richard Elliott was a strong temperance advocate, which means Doc Holliday, drinker, gambler, and future gunfighter, was living under the roof of a prohibitionist. I guess that made for some interesting dinnertime conversations. Also in that boarding house was John Gosper, the Secretary of the Arizona Territory and its most active acting governor at the time. So for a brief period in 1880, the future gunfighter and gambler Doc Holliday was sharing a house with one of the territory's most prominent political figures. It's not exactly the image we usually get with the picture of Doc Holliday, but it gives us something important. At this point, Doc was still a relatively young man trying to figure out where he fit in. He was still technically a dentist, but Prescott was increasingly becoming a place where he could make money doing something else. And that something else was gambling. And according to Wyatt Earp, Doc did very well gambling along Whiskey Row. And that tells us something about Doc. He didn't simply tolerate Prescott, he liked Prescott. He found an environment where his gambling skills could make him money, and Prescott's Whiskey Row was exactly the kind of place where a man like Doc Holliday could make a living. Wow! Whoa, look! Ah! Wow! Let's go! But there's an important distinction here. When we picture Doc Holliday today, we tend to picture the gunfighter, the man standing beside Wyatt Earp, the man at the OK Corral. But that wasn't Doc's identity yet. In Prescott, he was becoming known as a sporting man, a gambler, and that reputation would follow him. Perhaps the most remarkable thing Doc Holliday left behind isn't a story, it's a photograph. The famous photograph of Doc Holliday taken in Prescott was taken by D.F. Mitchell, and it was taken right here on Cortez Street. In fact, it was taken right here next to me. Of course, the building is long gone, probably burned by one of many fires that burned through Prescott. But imagine this photograph. 28-year-old Doc Holliday, long before the events in Tombstone, Arizona. Here he was just a gambler, a dentist, and a drinker. And he lived here in Prescott, Arizona. It's one of only 2 known photographs of Doc Holliday, the other one being his dental school graduation photo. And it was taken right here behind me on Cortez Street in Prescott, Arizona. By the late summer of 1880, Wyatt Earp was in Tombstone, and eventually he wanted his old friend to join him. Doc received word urging him to come south, and in September of 1880, Doc Holliday finally left Prescott for Tombstone. He was heading toward a place that would make his name famous. But when he left Prescott, he wasn't yet the legend we know today. That was still to come. And that brings us back to where we started, Prescott. Today, nearly a century and a half after Doc Holliday walked these streets, people still come here to celebrate him. And that's exactly what I'm doing. August 14th was Doc Holliday's birthday, and Prescott knows how to throw a birthday party.
So yeah, I just want to say, thank you to Wendy and Brad, Courtney for inviting me up here again, and also Ron Williams, one of my closest friends too. When I first met him in Tombstone back in I think 2020, right around the time I won the my first award as a Doc Holliday contest, and back in, like I said, in 2017 is actually when I discovered I actually had the same birthday as Doc Holliday. Um, and it just blew up from there because I was getting ready to go to Glenwood Springs to visit the memorial grave of Doc. And as my journey continued on, when I was doing research, I found out a lot of coincidences that I never thought was possible. Such as my father's birthday is actually the same day as the gunfight, October 26th.
Huh.
My father's middle name and last name is William Allen, which is actually the man that Doc had his last final gunfight with, Billy Allen, in Leadville, Colorado, over $5. My family actually, on my father's side, immigrated from Germany to where they landed in Dodge City, Kansas. We missed the Earps and Holiday by about 20 years. So pretty close on that one. It just as my journey continues on, I keep finding out more and more that I never thought would have been possible. But just want to say thank you to y'all. Thank you for coming. Never thought this would be possible in my lifetime, growing up like this. So, and being born actually in the same state that he actually passed away in, just 6 hours east of Glenwood Springs in the city of Colorado Springs. So, once again, thank you again, Wendy, Brad, and Ron. for also inviting me back up here, and also about 3 years ago when we did the plaque unveiling as Doc Holliday for his time here. And y'all days if you do.
There's something pretty amazing about watching people gather in the same town where Doc once lived, gambled, and made his mark. The buildings have changed, the people have changed, but Whiskey Row is still here, and so is the memory of Doc Holliday.
Well, that concludes our time in Prescott, Arizona, where we followed the life and times of Doc Holliday in this fine city. We had an amazing time at his 175th birthday party, and I'm sure if Doc was looking down at us from above, he was probably saying, "Oh, darling, thank you so much for this wonderful birthday celebration." I just wanted to say, if you enjoyed this episode of Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ding the bell for notifications. In the meantime, I'll catch you on down the trail. Action. Now? Sorry, I thought you were being smartass. At Doc Holliday's 175th birthday. And action. We had an absolutely amazing time in Prescott, Arizona tracing Doc Holliday's life in this city. We had an absolutely amazing time celebrating his 175th birthday at the